Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
Later we'll visit the Arvada Center during opening night for The Last Romance by Creede Repertory Theatre, check in with Irish folk duo Avourneen, and salute Colorado theater icon Henry Lowenstein. But we begin tonight with an update from Theatre Esprit Asia. Just starting their second season, Denver's only Asian American theater company has already earned critical acclaim and many awards.
Well, thank you for coming in this afternoon to talk to me about Theatre Esprit and the changes that have occurred since the last time we covered your work and this really extraordinary company. And it's also in the middle of your run for M Butterfly, so I know it's really busy. So I appreciate you taking time for me today.
Sure.
Tell me about what has happened since the first year that we talked to you about Theatre Esprit and told our viewers about their first Asian American theater company in Colorado. What has changed since then?
Yeah, well, a couple things have changed. One, sitting right next to me, Sushma Baga. We added a third co-artistic director because we wanted to cover all of Asia. And Sushma Baga, for obvious reasons, covers a different demographic than Maria and I do. Mm-hmm. So her expertise and her knowledge of the area and her style of performance was very important to us.
And on opening night for M Butterfly, you were able to explain that to the audience. So if you wouldn't mind revisiting that quickly about what you mean when you say cover the aspects of different components of Asian American culture.
Sure.
Well, we sort of, Tri and I being the original co-founders, we now, with hindsight, sort of arrogantly thought we could, between the two of us, we could cover all of Asia, at least.
And that being because of your own cultural
our
history.
background, and I thought I could take care of East Asia, Tria would take care of Southeast Asia. We very quickly realized, we have no experience in the Asian subcontinent.
I was going to say, you forgot part of Asia.
A huge part. But we were already in our season. The plays were already chosen in production. But before the end of our first year, Sushma was already on board with us, literally as a member of the board of directors. And so we kind of, with bated breath, said, Sushma, would you please, and much to our delight and relief, she said yes. So now we have the Asian subcontinent covered, finally.
Just a few billion people.
No pressure.
Thousands of years of culture.
Yes.
But what that speaks to is how challenging it is anytime you try to address race and culture and artistic heritage, regardless of the mission. And your mission is so ambitious all of its own that it's really wonderful to see that you recognize that hole in your leadership. What was it like for you when they turned to you and said, could you represent the subcontinent of Asia?
Well, they didn't really tell me that at that time, and I really didn't realize the implications of it, what they were saying, but, I was delighted.
Or you might have said no.
I would have said, let me sleep over. No, but I was delighted, and I was really very happy.
Before we talk about your background as theater makers and storytellers, let's talk about what that means when you decided after the Joy Luck Club at the Vintage to create this theater company. It's often so difficult for people to have discussions around race and culture and inclusion and diversity. So tell me about what that was like for you. Why did you say, this is our mission and this is what we have to do after that production?
Well, when Maria and I, were in the Vintage's Joy Luck Club, we saw immediately that there is a need for Asian Americans to participate in theater.
Not just as audience members.
Right, not just as audience members, but as artists, to be on stage, whether you write, direct, act, like other major cities that's happening now. There are so many theater companies there that catered to Asian Americans. We just felt like it was time for Denver to join the ranks of those major cities.
It's not like we don't have a strong Asian American population in Colorado.
Right.
For a long time, there's a strong history of a community. So it's really odd that there was no theater servicing not just the works that would tell those stories, but as my favorite part of your mission is finding ways to educate and give opportunities for training for Asian Americans who live here to participate in theater. Tell me about that part of your mission.
Well, we're still fashioning that program, and our post-show panel talkbacks is a huge part of that. We haven't yet officially gone into the schools, which we want to, but just in terms of the plays that we've been producing from the disparate cultures of Asia, we want to generate greater understanding and communication amongst the Asian sectors, and then also between the Asian sectors as an aggregate and the majority culture. And it's been a journey for us to find out how to do that, how to reach all the constituencies, and we haven't. We try with each production because we focused stories from China, the Japanese American experience story, the Korean experience, and coming right up in February, our next production, the South Asian experience. And so the school component is something we're still working on.
But you're also training the actors, the directors, the stage managers, the designers.
Just by doing. And we're learning. Oh my gosh, are we learning what we don't know? And so it's just to provide professional work opportunities for actors, for directors, for playwrights. And I must say the technical aspect of our theater right now in terms of set design, sound design, etc., that is with a Caucasian staff. But our emphasis is first the playwriting, acting, and directing. So those are the three areas we're focusing on in terms of bringing in people of Asian background.
So as you're creating these opportunities, and you said first is the theater, the first is the story, is the production. So is it fair then to adjudicate the performances at Theatre Esprit the same way you would Su Teatro or the Vintage Theater? Is that a fair comparison, or is this more of an education program?
No, I think it's fair because that's what we're striving for, to be a professional theater company that can be seen in the ranks of, the curious. That's our goal.
Yeah.
DCP, obviously, we're too big, too much money, and we'll probably won't be there. But
the quality of work doesn't necessarily isn't directly tied to budgets.
Correct, and that's why we've chosen smaller plays, with the exception of M. Butterfly. It's our biggest endeavor yet, but smaller plays that just focus on acting and the story.
You mentioned M. Butterfly. When we talked recently, I've told you how much I love that piece.
Yes.
And there's a special relationship between Theatre Esprit and the playwright. Maybe we can quickly touch on that.
Yes, actually, Maria, who knows the director very well, could probably speak on Rick Shiomi a little bit.
Well, M. Butterfly has been such a journey for us into the edge, into the unknown. Tria said it's the biggest, most expensive production, and I just find it ironic. Last year, our first year, we had 11 Asian American actors and one honky, one Caucasian. And we didn't mean it was just because of the plays, what they required in terms of acting. M. Butterfly. Here we are starting our second season, and the thing is switched. It is 5 Caucasian actors and 2 Asian actors, because that's how David Henry Wong wrote it. And obviously, by most people's agreement, he's the preeminent Asian English language speaking playwright.
And I'm sure part of his intent was to point up the differences in the story and in the theater.
Absolutely.
Right.
Tell me about what's coming next, because they alluded to that the biggest thing that's coming up really falls to the subcontinent.
True. In February, we are going to do 2 one-act plays. The first one is called Occidental Moon.
And who's the playwright?
Her name is Pavitra Prasad, and she belongs to the southern part of India. And she brings, in that play, she is bringing the mythological aspect of the moon, plus the science behind the moon. So it is good. It is a very interesting combination, and the futuristic imagination of being a colony
So
on the
mythology,
moon.
science,
And futuristic, yes. Yeah, so it's a very complex but very interesting layered project, and it is actually quite similar to Maria's Spirit and Sworded Track, which is kind of like a journey, and it is the same kind of feel to that. So that's the first one. The second one is called One Night of Thunder, and I have written that. And
Now you know why I asked you who the first playwright was, so we can.
My play is set in the eastern part of India, northeastern part of India, in Assam, which is basically the tea estate. And that portion of India was actually, the tea estates were founded by the British East India Company. And so it traces the heydays and the decline of that period, and it is a story of 3 generations of women, grandmother, mother, and daughter. And an interesting aspect of the play is that the grandmother is dead, so the mother is talking to the grandmother, and instead of a performer, we're using a puppet, a live puppet.
Which is also part of the theatrical history.
Yes. So that would be interesting. So there is interaction between live actors and a full life-size puppet. So,
I also find it very interesting that this theater company is run artistically by women.
Yay!
And so you're serving another mission without necessarily intending to for female theater makers. Tell me a little bit about each of your experience as theater makers or theater professionals that help you in this wonderful task of creating Theatre Esprit as a viable theater company here.
Yeah, so I studied the stage for my master's, and so that's where my training lies. But I spent most of my work experience in LA in film and television, and so my focus is mostly storytelling and acting, and making sure that we have really, really strong actors, so that we can be competitive and so that we can tell our stories the way that we want to tell them.
And give them opportunities for furthering their own craft.
Exactly.
How about for you?
I also come from a theater background. I was working for the National Repertory in India for theater, puppet theater, and then I got married and came here, which was a long time ago. But on and off, I was doing theater for the community. Indian community here. So I wrote, I directed, I made sets, I did everything pretty much. And so it was on a small scale. Smaller scale. And it was a lot of work. So when I met these two, I said, great, I don't have to invent the wheel here. They already have a platform.
And many hands make for light work.
Yes. And we all had a similar thinking where we wanted to go. And so it was great, So that's how I joined.
And you?
I came from a modern dance background, and not even traditional modern dance, as in Martha Graham or Merce Cunningham, but in terms of postmodern dance and new music theater. So I worked with theater artists, seminal theater artists like Robert Wilson, and
Not here in Colorado.
no, in Minneapolis, New York. I'll go wherever anybody will pay me to do my work. So in Europe, wherever. And so, and I'm so excited in terms of the three of us have this great mesh of background and expertise, because when I did my solo show last year, Tria was my directorial coach, and she would ask me these traditional theater acting questions, which really stretched me as an actor. And now that Sushma's on board with her master puppetry background, it really meshes with my modern dance background of breaking the boundaries. And that's where we want Theatre Esprit Asia to go. And so I love Tennessee Williams, Eugene O'Neill. We're thinking of, can we do an Asian Othello, But I also love that stuff that's out on the edge. That's why one of the works coming up with the puppetry. And I want to go back to your question, Eden, about how we see ourselves as compared with, let's say, a similar mission of Su Teatro, or we know that we exist. The majority of theater audience is white. Even as Su Teatro, I've gone to their performances. So how do we speak about the stories we want to speak about, the Asian diaspora from the inside out? But I really know that all three of us, we're not insular. We want to communicate. We live in this society. So we want to communicate and embrace and learn. And you asked about adjudication. How do we our theater just last month participated in the annual Colorado Theater Festival with 8 other larger, more established, bigger budget companies. And here we were, and none of the other companies were of an ethnic bent at all. We were clearly the only one. And it was such a learning experience for all of us to just trade talks, about putting on professional level theater. And the fact that we walked away with 6 awards was a total blissful shock. We had,
and they weren't making special allowances because you were a brand new or an ethnically focused.
It was just, and we were so confirmed, and because we walked away with the People's Award, which is by all 9 companies. We voted for each other, and it was a testament that we are communicating, and we don't want to just communicate within our own constituency. We want to reach out to the reality of the Colorado community.
Colorado community, training theater professionals from within the Asian American community and helping to create a tradition of attending and supporting theater within your community. I'm so glad that you're pushing these boundaries, and you gave us some time to catch up and find out what's going on with Theatre Esprit and meet your newest member of your artistic team. Thank you so much for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you for having us. Our pleasure.
You can find more information about Theatre Esprit Asia online by visiting theatre-esprit-asia.org, including information about their current co-production with Germinal Stage running now through October 19th. Once again, the Creede Repertory Theatre ends their season in the San Juan Mountains by bringing a production to the Arvada Center. Well, this is the 5th season in a row that the Creede Repertory Theatre has brought a production to the Arvada Center. This time it's The Last Romance. It's only here through October 26th, but tonight was opening night, so we have a chance to speak to the director. The Last Romance by Joe DiPietro is a romantic comedy about love in the golden years. A widower's chance meeting in a dog park makes him feel young again, as we see romance and desire have no expiration date. The cast features Christy Brandt, John S. Green, Ann F. Butler, and Sean Thompson, directed by Christy Montour-Larson. So this isn't the first time you're working with Creede Repertory Theatre.
It is the second time. Last year I directed Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. And then this year I did The Last Romance.
So I think that a lot of our viewers won't be very familiar with this play, even though I knew this show before. I think the sentiment is so palpable in just the page. Tell me how you attacked that when you got to work with the cast at Creede Repertory.
Well, the play is funny at its heart, but I also think that underneath a couple layers is that it's also universal, because it connects to the feeling that we all have in life, that we all should live life big, like an opera, and then we all want to be in love, because who doesn't want to be in love, whether you're 20 or whether you're 80 years old. So it was about making sure that we appreciated the humor in the play, but also that we acknowledge the fact that this play, when it's played at all its cylinders running, can really put a sock in your gut too.
Yeah. Well, good romantic comedy does that.
Yeah, that's very true, because who doesn't love a good romantic comedy? And also because this is a modern romantic comedy too. It's set in present day. It sides in present issues. I think a lot of people can relate to it because even if you're not in your 80s, you know people in your 80s. Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your grandparents that you can connect to.
And these characters are asking some of the questions of themselves that people in their 20s are asking themselves.
Right. The chance to live out a dream, the chance to be in love, the chance to, how much more life do we have? People are living so much longer than they used to. And so people are having not just their third act, but people are having their fourth act too.
One of the things that really stuck out in this staging for me was that you were able to find ways to sneak in some very contemporary references that aren't necessarily in the script. Tell me about that.
Well, I was telling this with the scenic designer, Amanda Embry, is that this place takes place in Hoboken, New Jersey, which looks on the New York City skyline. And I've directed a ton of plays that have the New York City skyline in there, where you will have the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building. But this is the first play I've ever done that has the Freedom Tower in there, which I thought was super cool.
And a musical reference that's very current for this year, too.
Oh, you mean I'm So Fancy?
Yes.
It's interesting about that, Eden, is that in the script, Joe DiPietro just says some form of rap music.
He doesn't specify.
He doesn't specify what it should be at all. And our sound designer, Jake Harbour, said, this is the song I think that we should use. And to be honest with you, when he first suggested it, I didn't know the reference at all. It was May, and I know it's become the song of the summer, and it's been interesting for me to see how, as we go along, more and more people are familiar with it, and you can always tell the young people in the audience because they get it. He throws a couple of laughs for them.
Well, it was a lovely, lovely production. I wonder, how does it feel to sort of transfer it so quickly from Creede to the Arvada Center?
We've all felt that it is better here at the Arvada Center. There's something about be able to have a little bit more elbow room in the theater space that's really nice. And there's something about being able to revisit it, I said it's sort of like coming off with a piece of beautiful furniture and sand it with a really fine piece of sandpaper, so that we're able to integrate a lot more nuances. And so my notes in this remount have been like a laser, just going in just subtly, saying this part could be a little deeper, this we could slow down a little bit, this we can speed up a little bit. So it's been a lot of fine-tuning, which is an awesome thing for a director to be able to do.
Well, it really showed tonight. It was a lovely evening. Everybody was feeling it tonight. Congratulations.
Oh, I love talking with you, Eden. You look fabulous too, and thanks for.
So do you.
Yeah, I know. Thanks so much. Yeah, it's great talking to you. Thanks.
So this charming production full of sentiment is only here through October 26th. You can find all the details online at arvadacenter.org.
Denver native Adam Goldstein and California import Chelsea Morden met while working with another Irish band and decided to strike out on their own. Chelsea's background from the Lamont School of Music as a classically trained violinist and Adam's cabaret and burlesque background have come together to create the Irish duo called Avourneen. Here's a first listen to their first independent album, Beloved.
There's a nice wee lass and her name's Mary Mac. Make no mistake, she's the miss I'm gonna attack. There's an awful lot of fellas that would get up on her track, but I'm thinking that they'll have to get up early. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. My father's making me marry Mary Mac. I'm going to marry Mary for my Mary to take care of me. Well, I'll be making Mary when I marry Mary Mac. A rootin' of the diddly idle dum.
The album title Beloved reflects the duo's Irish name, Avourneen, which in Irish means dear one or beloved. They're celebrating the release of their first CD on October 19th at Lanny's Clock Tower Cabaret, and also celebrates the release of Adam Goldstein's original music, old love songs, and other unhealthy fixations. More details and ticketing information are available online at lannys.com. This week we mark the passing of a Colorado cultural icon, Henry Lowenstein. The impact of his legacy reaches from large organizations like the Denver Center for the Performing Arts to smaller theater companies and other cultural institutions in Colorado. Here's just a glimpse of his work as told by Harvey Productions for Denver TV 8.
Helen Bonfils was the daughter of Denver Post founder Frederick Bonfils, and upon his passing in 1933, she took charge of the newspaper. But her primary passion was theater. With both her talent and treasure, she was a major contributor to the Denver stage. In 1953, she opened the Bonfils Memorial Theater on East Colfax Avenue. Helen met Henry Lowenstein in 1956 when she hired him as production designer for her Denver theater. Henry completed his graduate work in fine arts at Yale and joined summer stock and Broadway productions before moving to Denver to work at the Bonfils. In 1967, he became the theater's producer. For 30 years, the Bonfils Lowenstein Theater attracted the finest actors, technicians, and audiences, exemplifying a new level of professionalism in community theater. The final curtain dropped in 1986 when the Bonfils Foundation shifted its attention to the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. 20 years later, the building was reincarnated as the new home of the Tattered Cover Bookstore, with visages of Helen and Henry, evoking memories of a grand era from the adjacent courtyard.
That courtyard now bridges the Tattered Cover to the C Film Center, the screening home for the Denver Film Society, in what's now known as the Lowenstein Cultureplex. And Colorado Theater Guild's annual awards are simply known as the Henrys.
Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Snugglebug.